If you believe that the existing political system is working well enough that small incremental changes tolerable within the existing system will meet the needs of our land, people, and children, then this presentation is not for you. The notion of the spoiler effect comes from an assumption that one side of the existing two-party system will do a better job of protecting our future than the other. We have no evidence that this assumption is true, and therefore disregard it as a valid inhibitor of building and exerting our political will.
We are launching One Nation through a 2020 presidential campaign. That's the context by which we bring this party to the world. I'm about to share with you a presentation that's bold, it's courageous, and I say it from a grounded place of feeling into the import of this strategy, of the meaningfulness of this strategy, and of the leverage that we have available to us at this moment in time to be able to proliferate the conversation we're having in this room with a national and an international audience through the 2020 United States presidential campaign. The whole world saw something very interesting happen in 2016. And the whole world has been watching what's happened since then. And the entire world is going to be watching what happens in 2020. And this is going to be a moment in time to have our entire human family's attention looking at a very specific thing. And we, if we rise to this challenge, can be able to meet that attention with power, value, and the ability to have a transformative impact throughout the entire world. The 2020 campaign is a campaign of rebirth. It's a campaign to invite us to think back to the greatness that many carry from the founding of this country as an experiment of a new way of organizing politically. The founding fathers and mothers of America and those that fought in the Revolutionary War, through that act of violence, were able to birth a new possibility for how we govern that's not fully dictated by violence over. Now, I understand the ways that the system, the American system, has in many regards demonstrated principles that the very founding fathers were looking to be able to solve for. I get that. But what happened in the 1700s was a catalyst into a new era of politics beyond monarchy that has shaped the entire world, and arguably for the better. And in many ways, that process has been so impactful. It's created so much prosperity. It's created so much freedom that we've forgotten about its import. And 2020 is about rebirthing that civic engagement, reclaiming what's possible when we mobilize, when we bring our power together and say we are ready for something new. We are ready to put processes in place like the founding mothers and fathers did for us in the last 300 years, for the next 1,000 years. And we're going to look back, and we're going to look forward, and we're going to do something now to change the world forever. So let's go really big picture so you guys can be really clear on where this is all coming from. I'm pretty excited and jazzed about this idea of 1,000 years of peace. Right? It's like been in almost like all of the mythologies, and it's been this mythic destination that so many cultures have spoken into. There's metaphorical aspects of it also, but I think that a lot of folks have been trying to point to the literal aspects of this as well. So why not have that be a goal and a driving North Star for us? What would it really take for us to achieve 1,000 years of peace? Well, we'd have to have dignity, peace, creativity, and freedom for all. We'd have to have a regenerative global economic model, meaning that we could do the things we have to do, we could have the things we need and want to have in a way that actually perpetually made the world better for all people and ecology simultaneously. We would have to be planetary stewards. That would have to be one of our primary identities, that we wake up every morning feeling so excited that we have an opportunity to steward a planet and to work together as a human family to share that collective identity and charge. We would have to create phase change global infrastructure. What I mean by this is we have to rework what energy is and how we get it and how we use it. Rework food, rework transportation, rework the major systems at an infrastructural level that makes this world work going forward, because the existing infrastructure was built in the context of an extractive economy, which was the best that was available at the time that it was brought forward at scale, and yet is insufficient for us to be able to experience this. So if we're going to recreate our global infrastructure, we have to really be thinking about rebirth, because that's not going to happen through incremental change. And of course, we need an interstellar space program, because we all know that there's an enormous universe out there. There's a big world out there, and we have a place in that universe. And these are the types of things that we want to start thinking about as we come up with what's it going to take for us to experience this. And then we have to ask the deeper question, which is, okay, great. So how do we actually ground this in? There's the whole okay, let's think good thoughts and let's meditate and let's work on our vibration. And then there's kind of the activist, let's say that this thing's wrong and try and put another thing in. But where's all the space in the middle where we actually start building and creating this new society and the structures of that society that can ground this into our day-to-day reality? And I want to share with you an idea, a plan for a golden era, okay? We go real high level here for a second. 10 phases, all right? 2020 is a campaign to rebirth humanity. In that rebirthing humanity, we let the whole world know we're crossing a threshold together. We invite them into that threshold crossing. We initiate them into a realization of what that means, the systemic phase change required, the accelerated change that has to be able to be endured, and who we get to be as a global family navigating through that together. We get to tell the world that through the 2020 presidential campaign. And we move through in a way that's very grounded in our 3D tangible reality, which is we catalyze an international politicization of the regenerative movements I talked about earlier today, so that the hundreds of nations in the world can start to also catch on to ground the regenerative technologies and processes that we prove in America and that OneNation is integral in proving in our cities and states. And we start to share those best practices with our international allies as we bring the politicization of the regenerative movement around the world and build credibility and build impact and build efficacy of how we actually make human beings healthier and happier, how we actually interrelate with the ecology in a way that still meets our needs without being able to create a detrimental impact for the foreseeable future for those that have to inherit the world that we leave behind. In the next phase, we begin a massive recruiting, electing, and empowering effort. So at a worldwide level, we support tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of allies of this worldwide regenerative movement to move into elected positions of office around the world through the existing democratic processes available. We develop a core competence to be able to speak to those ready for unity consciousness and use that to be able to garner the votes required to have electoral efficacy to move leaders of the regenerative movement into positions of city, county, state, and national leadership around the world. From that point, we start to systemically transform the policies that actually govern the cities, states, provinces, and nations and our international alliances. And we begin to modernize the constitutions of various nations around the world. And the Constitution that was created for America 300 years ago didn't know how to take into consideration things like exponential technology, artificial intelligence, a fully globally interconnected economy. The list goes on and on. There's a lot of things that are now available that weren't available then, and we can be able to rebirth the existing Constitution by integrating it into the modern and future realities we're about to inhabit. That's needed for us to rebirth America and to rebirth the world. And as we do this together over the course of 5 to 8 years from now, then our national governments will start to become more congruent and coherent with each other, such that we can actually begin to interoperate with a deeper level of shared principles, even shared best practices on how we run our nations, so we can interact with each other with more efficiency. Beyond that point, governments themselves become a driving force for human and planetary regeneration. And we flip the exact narrative on its head that governments are the problem, that governments are the enemy, that governments are the thing to be overcome or the thing to be avoided or the thing to develop a new society in isolation of, or whatever that story is. We flip it on its head. And you guys have heard me use the metaphor before, like Neo to Agent Smith at the end of the first Matrix. He finally stops running. He turns around, looks him square in the eyes, and dives straight into the center of that which had been his opponent and splinters him into light from the inside out. And that's an opportunity that we have to do with our existing government systems and processes that life has given to us. Life has laid those governments at the threshold of this moment, saying here is a profound amount of capacity. Here is military, taxation, policy, massive amounts of organizational infrastructure. And if you, this is life, if you can muster up a couple of votes, it's yours to start to drive those vehicles. And so what if governments as they are is a perfect plan of life to tee us up with a high level of efficiency to step into leadership of our world? So we move into a global convention to rebirth the United Nations or some future expression of what that is, of a more formal way that we as nations interact. We came together with the United Nations, to look at warfare in World War II and how to deal with that better next time. Well, the new World War II is the fact that our ecology is deeply compromised and potentially becomes an uninhabitable planet. The new thing is that we are actually potentially facing massive destruction of our world if we don't get these exponential technologies like artificial intelligence right? So there's a new context, a new reason to bring us all back together for reals. Not just the United Nations that comes together to talk about this or that, but to actually really rebirth the foundational intention of the United Nations in order to serve the creation of a golden era for humanity. We have a transition period, and we launch that rebirth United Nations, and we catalyze a new planetary era. Okay? So this is a time for bold action. This is a time for us to get out of incremental change. This is a time for us to feel as ready for something extreme as a woman about to give birth. It's that level of intensity that's upon us. Not an intensity to fight, but an intensity to be radical. And birth is a radical process. So there's your high-level plan for a global era. And what I'm about to present to you is the grounded vision for how we run a 2020 presidential campaign that maximally sets us up for success for that 20-year game plan. So this assembly right here, just so you know, at this moment, as I'm speaking right now, is the launch of the 2020 One Nation presidential campaign. That campaign is the launch of this 20-year vision for our planet. So you're in the moment that leads into the possibility of the moment that leads into the possibility of the moment of us seeing this thing all the way through. So when we come into this window of the next 24 months, know that the world is watching. The entire world, almost the entire world is afraid of America, and almost the entire world is looking to America for hope at the same time. Wow. So what's our responsibility to the rest of the world? It's to figure out what we do to see this one through, step up in maturity and leadership, and provide a beacon of hope. Because it's the fear that we must transcend now. And we have the ability to bring a message forward that can activate people out of complacency and out of fear and into hope and into generativity. The world is watching, waiting, and looking for mature guidance. There's 8 distinct goals of this campaign, and you're going to notice what the 8th is. The first is to provide hope, okay? Has anyone in this room experienced some increase of hope as a result of being here today? Just look around. There's a lot of hands raised. So the 2020 campaign is already a smashing success. There's no lose. If we can help to create hope for 70 in a room, can we do it for 700? Can we do it for 7,000? Can we do it for 7 million? Can we do it for 7 billion? Okay? So this is our goal. This is why we're doing it. Because there's a lot of people, a lot of our brothers and sisters who are on the edge, if you know what I mean, of giving up entirely. And this is our opportunity to throw them a safety ring and say, don't give up yet. Stick around just a little bit longer. The show's about to get good. The second goal of the campaign is to model a win-win paradigm. We talked about it before, so I'm not going to go into it much more. But it's through the campaign itself that we are going to showcase how we talk to each other, how we elevate the conversation, how we take multiple perspectives, how we demand that we're not going to talk about something until all the people who have something to say about that topic are in the room. And that we are so confident with our creative capacity that it's not an if we can figure out a win-win solution to anything. It's just how much do we care and how creative are we? We figured out the atomic bomb. We can figure out any one of the polarizing topics I mentioned earlier today. And we're going to model that in profoundly impactful ways that I don't have the time to elaborate with right now. Just trust me, it's going to be amazing. We're going to directly experience healing. Directly. We're not going to talk about healing. We're not going to point to it. We're actually going to go through that process individually and intercommunally and interracially. And what happened today, hearing from a number of different community leaders and some of the shares earlier, was just a touch, just a smidge. But through this campaign, we're going to shine the light on the pain that still lives in the shadows of this world and of this nation. And we're going to do it maturely and responsibly so that that can come forward, so that pains can be acknowledged, so that tears can be shed, so we can really understand the shared humanity and increase our empathy and use that platform of connection and healing as the foundation for building and rebirthing a new world. We are going to mobilize a mighty community, a very mighty community that, dare I say, is begging to be mobilized right now. Begging to have a flag, to have marching orders, to know when does that thing happen where everything changes? Because I know everything's going to change, but I can't see how we go from here to that. And it's an act of leadership for us to be able to open up the path from where things are at to where things are going and help to bring that mighty community of warriors and guardians and mamas and papas all together in service to our multi-decade arc of rebirthing humanity. In this campaign, we are going to cultivate leaders, powerful leaders. We're going to train our leaders and our speakers and our communicators and the faces and the avatars of this movement with fighter pilot precision, so they can stand bold in their power and their humility simultaneously. So their hearts and their minds can be activated simultaneously. So they can speak to the pain without reinforcing the blame. So they can help to bring the voice forward of the truths that their communities have been holding that the rest of us haven't quite gotten yet, and have compassion for our slowness in understanding the truths that they bear, while simultaneously leading their communities powerfully into a space that can help to get the result they actually want, because we're coming to a clear realization that the result that any one community wants cannot be attained from that community working in isolation. We are going to rebirth public discourse, what we talk about, how we talk about, what the agenda is, what the priorities are, what the talking points are, what the narrative is. I mean, the existing political system has driven their narrative as far as it can go, and it's a dead end, and it's stopping here now. And it's designed, it's engineered, a lot of respect to its power, built on fear and divisiveness. And we are stronger than that fear, and we are smarter than those divisive tactics. And as I showed you earlier today, 6% on one side and 8% on the other are driving that existing narrative. That's 84% of the rest of us actually ready for a new narrative about what's actually going on in our world. And this can come through powerfully through the context of a presidential campaign, while everyone in America and the world is asking the question, what the heck is next for America? In this campaign process, we are going to build phase change political capacities. What does that mean? That means we're launching a political party that's building a voter base and a financial base and an awareness base and an identity base that can help to navigate that 20-year global transition process that I labeled before. How many tens of millions of Americans can we invite into a new conversation, a new political affiliation, a new political identification? And can we gain the exit velocity that we need as a political party in the context of the 2020 campaign to be able to penetrate beyond what any other party has been able to achieve in America thus far? I believe the answer is yes. I believe that because the answer is yes, we have a moral imperative to see how far we can take this. The eighth goal of this campaign is to provide national leadership with a new presidency in America. I absolutely believe this is possible. I'm about to unpack this further. I'm standing here in my integrity and truth, letting you know that we are planning for a successful outcome in the 2020 campaign. And if that doesn't happen, look at everything we get along the way. So there's no lose. This is just all fun, baby. All fun, all the way. Every milestone we achieve, every magnitude of impact we make serves all of these levels of intrinsic value. This isn't all or nothing. This meeting right now is the efficacy of the campaign. 8 goals for a campaign. You guys into that? All right. Okay. How do we select our candidate? Well, we've got a party. We've got a party platform. We need a candidate, right? Yes. But what I want to emphasize before I mention this next piece is that we have an opportunity to do something that's never been done before. Because how do most presidential campaigns work? They're like this. You have one person, one face, one voice in the front. They're maintaining most of the energetic responsibility of meeting the world through their communication. And you have a bunch of people that are mostly invisible kind of standing behind them. But what if we take that shape and we go like this? What if we put together a team and an army of powerful leaders and spokespeople and avatars and community leaders that represent the major different issues, the major different political ideologies, the major different races and communities in our country, and we all stand shoulder to shoulder and run that campaign like a platform and not as a person. And in the very execution of the campaign itself, model unity consciousness. And to meet the existing system as it is, we need a person with a name that we're going to get on every ballot in all 50 states so that people can click that box. How do we decide who that person is and who would ultimately become the new president of the United States of America? Well, we build our own internal campaign infrastructure. So by October 2019, we did create our process of candidate selection internally. We have a registration process that happens by December of 2019. So those in the party who feel like they would be the right candidate can be able to register and present themselves. And then we run an internal campaign through the month of January 2020. But rather than pushing each other down, we actually have really powerful conversations like who's got what level of commitment and what's their personal congruence, like my little typo there, and what America needs in leadership, and what does the world need, and what's going to help to achieve the best campaign outcomes, and what's our best fit. Because I am certain that we can get a handful of amazing candidates that don't have the ego that would prevent us from having this authentic conversation publicly and transparently. So the membership base of the party can hear that and feel in their heart and their mind who they feel is the best candidate. And of course, the party culturally is selecting out for ego and selecting out for divisive tactics. So those tactics that other parties happen to have internally, like, will inevitably kick a person out of the process because that's not how they're going to get the votes. They're going to get the votes by modeling unity consciousness. So we go through this process, and we just so happen to build an internal digital primary election process so we can model to the entire world how through digital voting, which is a critical upgrade needed for democracy around the world based upon blockchain technology, can occur in a way that's really credible, and we can blast this PR campaign to the world and show how we have internally used a digital voting process to determine our candidate for the 2020 campaign. And so by February of 2020, we have a candidate, and the party's standing with that candidate and a team of dozens, if not hundreds of leaders side by side as peers, marching and campaigning and speaking and filling the stadiums concurrently. We're parallel processing stadiums all over the country because we don't even need one person to be there because we have a whole army of spokespeople. All right, that's the campaign selection piece. All right, so how do we get ballot access? Okay, that's the next question. Right? Okay, we got a person, we got a party, but how do we get that stuff on the ballot so when you go on November 6, 2020, there's a name there if you check the box. Okay. This is called prototyping, okay? So in order for us to be on the ballot as a party, we have to go through a very methodical process with every single state to become represented as a major party in those states. That's going to take us about a year, and the year we're going to do that is going to be in 2021, not before that. Great. So how do we get on the ballot without going through that process? We're going to smash some things together in a way that hasn't happened before, but we're going to do it because we're innovative. We're going to run our candidate legally as an independent. That's the technical designation, okay? The party is currently a national committee, meaning we don't have all of the state-based organizations in place yet required to get the state-by-state ballot access as a party. But if this person supported by all of us times a million, with One Nation by their name, because when you register as an independent in 23 of the states, you can even just write whatever you want to as your party affiliation, despite the fact that you got there as an independent. So the world's not even going to know. It's going to be a prototype process. The world doesn't even care the legalities of it. And so all we need to do is get a handful of signatures. In 23 of the states on the ballot, they can write whatever they want next to it. So they don't have to write independent. They can write One Nation, just the same. So from a user experience on the ballot, it's just going to appear like there. So we need 870 signatures. Because if you look right here, this is the requirement per state on signatures to get an independent candidate on the ballot. And this is the deadline for filing. Okay? So if you look at some of the big ones, California, we need 178,000. Okay? Kind of a lot, not that much. You look at Pennsylvania, for example. Hey, look, we only need 5,000 to get on the ballot. And all of these dates are between, May to September 2020. So we have about 4 months from the time that we select our candidate to the time that we have to have the petitions completed to make sure that that candidate is on the respective state ballot. And to win those key states, we only need 420,000 signatures, but I think we should just go for all 50 states. And what's cool about this is a really fun integral component of the launch itself. So we could have all of these little victories along the way as we're vectoring towards this presidential outcome. So every one of these states, look, 1,500 signatures, and we're on Iowa, right? 1,000 signatures, we're on Arkansas. 1,000 signatures, we're on Rhode Island's ballot. So we get to have all these fun wins. We get to organize the community. We get to have a little test run of how we organize communities to be able to achieve outcomes in March and April as we prepare for the big push in August, September, October. So it's like this really natural process to get ballot access and make sure that everything's on track for people to just check a box when they get to the ballot. Okay, so I got to preface this next one because this next slide might be confronting, and I'm going to say it anyways, and you guys are just going to hear me and feel me all the way through till I get to the end of the slide without making a judgment before that point, okay? It's time for voting warfare. The founding fathers of America sent their sons to the battlefront, many of which did not come back. And what they gave us is an opportunity to create political change without having to do that again. That's what they gave us. That's the affordance of the American Revolution. But what happens is because we don't see voting as extreme as war, we don't take it as seriously. So it's kind of like something that we kind of just hang out, and maybe we vote, and maybe we care, and maybe we organize it. And if there's not a lot of people that are actually inspiring you to get to those ballots, then that's totally understandable because voting for the lesser of two evils, isn't that inspiring? But if we organize to vote with the level of military precision and extremism that we would organize to go to war, we can penetrate the existing system, bring some level of blitzkrieg to the streets that they will fundamentally not be able to anticipate, and be able to create ripples in American and worldwide politics. The word war comes from waren, a German word, to confuse, mix up, or perplex. So this is not a statement of opposition. This is an opposition energy. So you don't need to be like oh no, we shouldn't fight kind of a thing. I'm saying we need to come in so hard and so strong that we confuse, mix up, and perplex the existing system. We need to be engaging non-violently in the democratic process with as much or more intensity, radicalism, extremism, self-sacrifice, organization, and precision as armed conflict. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Breaking out of our comfort zones. But as we break out of our comfort zones, like our Native American relatives show us with Standing Rock and so many other movements, we've got to come out of our homes. We got to get uncomfortable. We can't just sit comfortable with our popcorn on our couch and our social media and think that we're doing the thing. Like, everybody has to get uncomfortable with how you're talking to people, with how you're organizing yourself, with how you're sacrificing things to do something that's more extreme than anything you've ever been done before. But if we do that, times a couple million of us, we have guaranteed electoral success in 2020. Nobody stays comfortable in the birthing process. And this concept of voting warfare is a challenge for every single person to take this so seriously that they move outside their comfort zone. And there's an inference here that I'm going to just make explicit, which is as arms of the government are reaching beyond the constitutional bounds that were designed to bound them, we could potentially be vectoring towards a totalitarian regime in America despite the laws, where the power just gets out of control and there's nobody around to say, but that's not allowed anymore because we've actually missed that opportunity. So what I'm trying to say is it's possible that if we don't mobilize to vote with as much intensity as mobilizing for war, we might have to mobilize for war. And I would like to be able to prevent that need and that opportunity for us to fully leverage and exercise our voting capacity while it's intact. To define nonviolence here, this is very important, right? Engaging in nonviolence. Nonviolence means, in the definition of OneNation, void of physical violence, void of verbal aggression, void of judgment, hate, vandalism, character-based personal attacks, and blame. So we can mobilize with the same level of intensity while doing it fully congruent and coherent, this definition of nonviolence. I also want to name a distinction between oppositional forces and taking things down, okay? Because what is asked from us in our power is to shut things down, is to be shutting things down. And a hospice nurse isn't in opposition with their patient. They're just there to be able to shut them down, okay? A janitor isn't in opposition with the lights on. They're just there at the end of the day to shut it down. And we're here right now to help to shut down some very specific things. We're here to shut down the win-lose paradigm. Shut that down responsibly, maturely, acknowledge it for what it is, honor it for what it is, and also just let it go. We're here to shut down binary thinking that's kept us in the us versus them, right versus wrong, good versus evil, yes or no. All this binary thinking is a trap that we've trapped ourselves in. The answer to every question is neither this nor that. The answer to every question is, well, let's take a whole bunch of perspectives together and discover what emerges in the space between us. Always be the answer. And we're taking down the dominance of the two-party system. And this is not aggressive towards either the Democratic or the Republican Party. I'm excited to co-share the stage of American politics with both of those parties. But what's happened is they have encroached and entrenched themselves into a position of near hegemonic or all-powerful power in America, as I said earlier today, making that two-party system become synonymous with American politics. It's time to shut that down and create a whole new era of diverse, spacious opportunity in American politics. So that's what this is all about. And we're talking about a revolutionary campaign that has incredible vision, world's most amazing art, because the world's most amazing artists are ready for this. Heart and care, incredible diversity and inclusivity, deeply integrative, radical, international in nature, intrinsically empowering to those that are part of that campaign so their lives get better, they get wholer, they get more empowered by inherently being a part of the campaign itself. Global phase change messaging that has never been a part of a presidential campaign, and celebration and joy. So we go into the streets, the world can feel our power and our military-grade, precise organization, and they can see our hearts when we dance and when we hug and we love each other and we celebrate all the ways that this world is so amazing as it is. Everyone's voice must be represented as an avatar. And you're going to see a long list, and this is just what can fit on a screen without the font going so small that it's stupid, of the avatar categories that we are currently and will continue to recruit and train into our leadership programs so they can serve their role as a bridge and voice for the communities they represent. And so we can begin to take these people and put them together in specific constellations to have mature conversations about previously polarizing topics, record that like reality TV, and start to show the world that this notion that we can never get along is actually something that has been fed down our throats, but we actually can get along if we just upgrade the quality of our conversation. And we can model this through our avatar base and help all these topics to have profound, healing, empathetic reconciliations. We will deploy revolutionary tactics. And when I say revolutionary, that's a play on words. It's a double meaning, because not only are they revolutionary in the sense that they're like new and leveraging art and technology and mobilizing people in ways that have never been done before, but they're actually revolutionary tactics, because the tactics that we will be deploying are tactics that have been proven to overthrow dictators non-violently in countries around the world when citizenry has been controlled by totalitarian regimes and organized non-violently to replace those regimes with democratic processes and systems. There is a framework for bringing a nation's populace together that is sufficiently discontent to help each other see how big our numbers really are. But instead of a dictator, we're looking at a hegemonic two-party system. But the good news is we already have the democratic infrastructure in place. So we don't have to create democracy. We just need to leverage the channels of democracy that have already been created so that we can be able to penetrate the existing full power of the two-party system. So we're leveraging these revolutionary tactics that have been proven in European countries, in South American countries, in Middle Eastern countries, the very tactics that resulted in the Arab Spring. The Arab Spring was not an accident. It was a methodical application of proven tactics in Libya, in Egypt, and other countries at the same time, and they all worked. These are proven tactics that will bring together, while also simultaneously bringing forward proven tactics of winning democratic elections and then combining these two things together to create something that the world's never seen before. And one of my good buddies, Ian Harrington, who I talk to regularly, his full-time job is winning presidential elections as a consultant internationally. He's fully on board. He wanted me to tell you that he's ready to bring all the best practices that he's been cultivating for decades, that he's kind of questionably wondering if they've been used for the light or the dark, and he's ready to bring that to win a presidential campaign for the light. And of course, we just innovate the crap out of like all the stuff that we know we can, because we go to like special places that help to teach us about innovation and magical awesomeness. So here's a list of revolutionary tactics. We have tactics divided by phase. I'm about to show you the phases in a moment. There's about 120 tactics I'm currently tracking. The list will probably get to about 200 or 300 by the time this thing's ultimately happening. A tactic is defined by a definitive, measurable, intentional, scalable, replicable process. So every single tactic can have its own team, its own budget, its own leadership. They can operate autonomously. They're not dependent on the other tactics, and yet there's synergistic implications. So one tactic can die, but the whole system doesn't come down, all that kind of stuff. So we're launching our first 26 tactics in phase 1. And all the whys are tactics that will actually be live by the end of tomorrow. So we're like, 2/3 of the way through activating the tactics that we have in phase 1, and then we just methodically turn these things on. We recruit world-class leadership and talent in leading these specific things. We apply budgets to them, and we just start to rip this whole thing open. So what are the 12 phases? Here are our 12 phases to having an electoral outcome. This moment right now is the commencement of the commence phase. Means we're just getting started, folks. And we're in a San Diego assembly. That's us. That's now. Wait a second. This is happening. It's kind of like deja vu, but it's here right now, and we're having it. And this leads us into a 3-month commence phase, and then we methodically move through these distinct phases that all have different tactical rollout correlations as well as quantitative metric associated to the phases, so we know objectively that we're on track, and so we can build donor trust by showing them, here's quantitatively where we said we were going to be. Give us a little bit now, let us prove ourselves, and let us come back and ask for more. And as we build those cycles of trust with a financial base, and we do what we say we're going to do, and we hit our goals, I am certain that through these months, boom, 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 there will be a full unleashing of financial resources to stand behind this, because this is needed. And there are millionaires and billionaires that have been waiting to figure out how to direct the resources they've been given to steward for maximum leverage. And I believe they will see in the 2020 campaign a very good answer to that question. We reconvene February 1st through 3rd in Austin, Texas. Why are we in Texas? You guys understand why we're in Texas. Because we're strategically and intentionally building the major fronts of this voting warfare. We go to New York, Chicago, San Francisco. These in bold that aren't fully definitive, but you can start to see that we're working our way through the country. And these are just our general assemblies. Of course, we'll have all kinds of other convenings, but with every general assembly, there's more people there. There's more power represented there. There's more celebrities who are paying attention. There's more press. There's a moment to come together and convene. There's a day or two of stuff like this, and then there's a week afterwards where we all integrate and synthesize and collaborate, and we just keep pulsing. We come together, we go and do our thing. We come together, we go and do our thing. We come together, and this is building the momentum with power, all leading us towards coming together on January 20th, 2021 for the OneNation inauguration in DC. All right. I know I'm a little bit intense. Thanks for sticking with me. We're almost done. This is what I freaking care about. So I know you're asking, okay, then what, right? Like, it's like, we're not going to solve the whole thing by just like getting a present off. It's like, what naive, stupid, ungrounded thinking is that, right? Well, it just so happens that it's not immaterial to have a president in office. And we've seen that there's a lot the president in office can do. But beyond all the doingness, it's a platform of communication to America and to the world. And we can use that platform of communication to build the hope, to ground the unity consciousness, to transform our international relationships, to be able to see if the world is really ready to transition from an extractive economy to a regenerative economy. And in addition to that, if that wasn't good enough, in 2021, because now we have all of the membership base built in the course of doing the 2020 campaign, now getting recognized in the 50 states is a breeze because we have the membership base in place, we have the organizational stuff in place, so it's like no problem. And from that point on, we have permanent ballot access. I said permanent ballot access. That means that anything, mayoral election, governor election, treasurer, county sheriff, city sheriff, all that stuff, we have a One Nation candidate on the ballot in every state thereafter forever. Okay? And that's non-trivial because we're building this fleet, this army of leaders. We're preparing them to actually fully move in the existing system with love and grace and transformative intentions. So we recruit and train an army of candidates. And in the 2022 election cycle, we have extensive placement of One Nation leaders. Extensive. By the thousands, maybe by the tens of thousands. And now we've achieved a non-trivial result. And this is with or without a electoral outcome in 2020. With or without, we are positioned to do these things. And how would the world be different if there was 1,000 mayors that grew up through the One Nation platform? How would the world be different if there was 10,000 elected sheriffs who had come up through the One Nation platform? How would the world be different if our governors were able to stand there, if our state representatives and legislators, if our national legislators, it doesn't take very many votes to get a state rep in a state legislature. It doesn't even take that many votes to get a congressional rep in the House or even the Senate. These are relatively straightforward things to do if we have the will to do them. And we are inviting you to join us to have the will to do this. So just so you can ground over the next 3 months, my intention for this assembly is that you join us for the next 3 months. Whether or not you believe that we can do all this stuff that I talked about, I want to make a deal with you that if it's even interesting, sign up for 3 months and see what's possible. And be with us together, not on the like, well, let me see kind of how it goes, but like, okay, let me see if I can help you do this thing. And if we can hit the numerical metrics that we want to be at by the end of the commence phase, double down on another phase with us. Go in for round 2. And let's see if we can spin and spin and spin and this snowball effect that starts with your buy-in and your participation. So our focused efforts for this phase, that some number of us will all be in together, is to build our organizational systems as a party and augment our team, to be able to run our 2020 campaign financial analysis and understand our financial needs for that based upon the tactics we want to deploy, and launch our first instant of our 26 different tactics. We want to expand our network, and we want to build our Texas Alliance as we move and prepare for our Texas Assembly. The outcomes we want to achieve is we want to have metric-based momentum building so that objectively we can show we're building momentum because the numbers say so. We've proven demand and adoption from across the historical ideological divide. Remember I said that there's people that have been libertarian, Republican, Democrat, Green Party, progressive, liberal, conservative, and we think that we're all different. But if 3 months from now, we can show a reasonable recruitment from people that have historically represented or associated or identified with these perspectives, then that is proof in the pudding. That's powerful. If we have in our Texas Assembly a cohort that were libertarians and are now One Nation, and that were Republicans and are One Nation, and were Democrats and were Green Party and are now One Nation, if we take a moment and think about the profound implication of that, right? That would be a pretty cool thing to do over the next 3 months. We have financial projections so that it's easier to raise money. We have shareable media by the end of the next three months so that it's really easy for people to be educated and to proliferate the movement and to build that collective intelligence field. When people share stuff with other people that they know would be interested, then it allows us to like run through that mycelial network of our networks to be able to build the movement. This meet is both educating people as well as augmenting our audience, our membership base, and our donor support. And we fully initiate our 26 tactics as outcomes by the end of this phase. Just so you can kind of get a sense for it, here is a scoreboard for the campaign. Here are some of the metrics that we're looking to be able to track. By the end of this campaign, we'd like to have 2,000 people on our email list. Pretty simple and straightforward, but also non-trivial. 6,000 people on our fan page, $50,000 raised, and over 200 members of the party. Again, all these numbers, you look at them, you're like, what's the like, those aren't even that big of a numbers. Yeah, so let's do it. And then let's come back together having done that. And then let's scale these numbers up. And you can show how each of them kind of start to go like this because we're building momentum. And these numbers will vector us towards where we need to be by phase 12. The revolution is recruiting, right? So you're being invited to join the revolution. We have external roles, supporters, members, and field organizers. Everyone's invited into membership. We have internal roles, meaning they work within the organization of OneNation Party itself. And we have spare time roles, which is like 5 hours a week, part-time roles, which is 10 to 20, full-time roles, 30 to 40. And that ultimately leads into paid staff, which we don't have that piece in place. So we're looking for external support and internal volunteer support. And tomorrow is going to be about going deeper into the roles that you can each play to help us to achieve the outcomes of the next phase. Here's some of the roles that we're looking for. Here's some of the roles we already have in place. Everything's tracked by volunteer dedicated hours per week. So right now we're at 85. We want to recruit another 115. So by going into February, we have 200 committed volunteer hours professionally engaged in an organized team per week. I believe it will come out of this assembly likely, having another something like 115 weekly hours committed. And so that is our campaign to rebirth humanity. Everyone has a role. What's yours? Ladies and gentlemen, ready yourselves, because 2020 is the year we rebirth this nation and begin to rebirth humanity. Thank you.